Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Matt Lateplo, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our next live presentation from Power Nickel Inc., a Canadian exploration company focused on nickel, copper, gold, and other battery metal prospects in Canada and Chile. Please note you can submit questions in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings through the Schedule Meetings tab found on the conference platform. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Terry Lynch, Chief Executive Officer of Power Nickel Inc., which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol PNPNF and on the TSXV under the symbol PNPN. Welcome, Terry.
Matt, thanks for having us. Great to be here. So without further ado, we'll take you right into the Power Nickel story. We have as an objective to become the world's first carbon neutral nickel mine, and we'll talk to you about how we're planning to do that. We're not going to tell you anything we don't believe is true, but it's always good to do your due diligence in all matters in this life, and we certainly would recommend you do that with us and every other investment you look at. I think one of the things I feel personally when I make the biggest investment gains is when I get the macro right, and then I get the micro right within the macro. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you are thinking that all of a sudden the mining sector is coming back, then I believe it is because commodities have turned, then now's the time to get into mining. And I think that's what we want to sort of show in this chart here, which is just showing how the commodities are versus equities. And we're really at the bottom here and starting to turn. And what's more important is that there are things that are driving the turn are really government policy. So in America, it's the Inflation Reduction Act. In Canada, it's our critical minerals legislation. And in Europe, it's another critical mineral legislation. In all cases, the governments are providing massive incentives to consumers and to industry to change behavior, to move away from oil and CO2 generating hydrocarbons towards greener energy. And that's going to drive a lot of growth and need for a lot of commodities in the what we call the battery metal space. So there's in North America alone, there's something like $60 billion worth of construction happening now to build battery plants over the next few years in the northeastern United States and in Ontario and Quebec. And that is going to drive make a big push for the battery metal space in particular. So if you're in, lithium, obviously everyone is excited about that. Copper, cobalt, and let's not forget nickel. Nickel is actually, if you look at it, one of the hardest ones to find in commercially viable quantities. And we think that's one of the reasons why we're so stoked about the Power Nickel prospects. On the top right, we'll get into this chart in a bit more detail as we go through it, but it basically will show us as we compare ourselves against other nickel sulfide projects around the world, the ones that the market perceives to be commercial. And what we'll show is that we're trading between, I would say, 5 to 20% of the values of these companies. And I don't think we're the worst one there. I think we're going to be maybe the best one. We'll see. But it's certainly going to be revalued in the very short order, I feel, as the world begins to understand what Power Nickel is bringing to the table. How will they learn that new information? Well, they'll learn it primarily by following some of the acts that we've done. We've just done some amazing strategic investment situations, which we'll talk about in a second. But we'll also be updating our 43, with a brand new 43101 coming out probably in October, and we expect that to show commercial tonnage of somewhere 8 million tons or thereabouts in north, and that would be enough to make this a commercial mine, and we believe that is the case. And we think that's just the start. That's just we've just started on our first pod. The way nickel sulfide mines work, there are always multiple pods. So we'll see a lot of drilling news come out. We just announced today or yesterday that we started drilling again, And we're really excited about our drill programs going forward, and we expect that ultimately this is a nickel sulfide ultramafic deposit. Other ones like it in Canada were Lynn Lake, 22 million tons, and Voisey's Bay, the legendary nickel discovery there at over 50. We certainly think we're going to be in that league. So that's a bold claim, but you'll see why when we start to roll out the evidence there. One of the big things we just announced recently was we announced a major strategic investment with CVMR Corporation, basically funding effectively a feasibility study at NISC. So we're jumping the shark a bit in terms of moving very quickly to a feasibility study on this, which would be the precursor to building the mine. And we're quite excited to have CVMR Corporation step up and do that. CVMR is perhaps not a household name like Glencore or perhaps Rio Tinto might be, but they're a substantial private concern. 18 joint venture plants around the world, building a couple of billion-dollar projects now, doing some pretty legendary things. They're one of I would say, the top nickel powder, anode, and wire producers in the world. Some of the stuff that you might recognize them for is obviously this is OTC. So we're in America. So the US $100 bill is being printed on a nickel plate made by CVMR. So you can imagine the scrutiny you'd have to go through to be able to do that. But their powder technology makes it almost impossible to counterfeit the US $100 bill. And then on the flip side, they've the big super collider research centers that are in Sudbury. They have these $10 million nickel tubes made with 5.9 purity, and they did that as well. So they're a really high-end producer, and that was one of the things that attracted us to working with them, is that they told us they're getting between 2 to 3 times LME price for their nickel. Versus, if we were just selling it for concentrate, which is the typical pathway for a mine. So if you can actually go from just being a concentrate producer to actually being a finished products producer, that's where the real money is in nickel. And certainly with our association with CVMR, we now have that possibility for our shareholders. Where we're located in the world, we're located in Quebec, Canada. Arguably the top mining jurisdiction in the planet, I would say, for critical minerals. Why is that? 3 big reasons. Number one is infrastructure. They built a number of roads and airports through the province. And in our case, we're literally driving off of Route North, which is a major 3 and 4 lane highway. And we drive right off the road to our site. Across the road is a Hydro-Quebec substation. So we got green hydropower ready to power our facilities. We're 8 kilometers outside of the town of Nemaska, and Nemaska has an airport and lots of spots for supplies, and our drillers stay there at night in the Cree Resort Lodge. And that brings me to our second point of why Quebec is so great to work in, is they've done an amazing job of working with our First Nations. So they've done a good job of educating and cooperating with them and showing them how they can benefit from mining and discoveries, how they can keep their youth in high-paying jobs in their local communities, and how their businesses can sell, do business with us and participate in the profits in the mining sector. So that's been a really big plus. So as a result, community risk, which is often a big risk in mining, is very diminished in Quebec, and especially in this area. In our 100-kilometer radius of our area, there's 4 mines being built or built. So that's a very good sign. Third, and one of the more critical things as a investor, is the financial incentives to explore in Quebec and develop in Quebec are unparalleled in the world. So, for example, we just did a financing at 50 cents. And the stock was at 25. Well, how do we do that at 50 cents? Well, because of these tax credits and flow-through benefits that you can get. And the investors could come from America. They could come from Sweden. They could come from Scandinavia or Switzerland. Doesn't matter. Don't have to be Canadian to take advantage of these things now with the new structures. So it's, from a shareholder perspective, our shareholders got diluted at 50 cents. The investors get in at 25. We got 50 cents in capital to work with. So that was really fantastic. So that's what we call 2-for-1 exploration. And the same thing exists, with development. So now, just recently in the Quebec and federal budgets, they've announced the feds to provide a 30% tax credit to build a mine, and the provinces up to 25%. So almost half your costs are now going to be paid for with tax credits by the government that you can turn to cash. So those are some pretty phenomenal incentives and reasons why Quebec is such a top tier location. We mentioned about being the world's first carbon neutral nickel mine. Obviously, we're all environmental citizens. We want to contribute to a greener world. But of course, it has to make economic sense. Otherwise, we can't, advance forward the project. And what makes economic sense is cleaner nickel will yield higher prices. There's a number of, I would say, challenged CO2 nickel projects in the world, and consumers are, looking into this. And as a result, we expect to get somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000 more a ton for our material. How will we make it the world's first carbon neutral nickel mine? Well, number one, we got electricity from Hydro-Quebec that will power our mine. It's an ultramafic deposit that allows us to sequester carbon when we put the tailings out on a stack. And by using the CVMR process on the if we choose to go that way on the refining process, it's the lowest impact of any nickel approach. There's three ways to make nickel: nickel smelting, nickel hydrometallurgy, or a chemical metal vapor process, and the last one is definitely the most environmentally friendly. So all these things will enable us, we believe, to become the world's first carbon neutral nickel mine. As I mentioned, we have to be fundamentally driven. So in mining, that means you have to have ore bodies, you have to have grade and tonnage. So we started off with 3.1 million tons of a historic resource of about 1.6% nickel, and then we've been very successful drilling it. So we substantiated that historic resource with 8 drill holes, 7 of the 8 hit, and sort of extended that. And then we started our drill program last year, and it was very successful. Each one sort of opened up new territory. This was a great hole, 40 meters of almost 1.6% nickel EQ, 150 meters away from our nearest resource. Then we drilled the next hole down over here, was about 10 meters of 3%. It was about 90 meters away from the 150 meter hole, and then 16 meters of 1.6, about 80 meters away from the 10 meter hole. And then we went a little bit east over here and had another 15 meters of 1.5%. So a very robust response. And you'll notice that this trend is south and east here, and we're going to follow up on that in a second. This sort of shows you the river of nickel as it's a windy flow. It goes up to the surface, starts at around 200 meters, and then it goes in like this. So you can see if you miss any of these turns, you really miss something. It's so important to be able to track Mother Earth, because she's a crafty lady and hides her ore very well. This gives you an overview of the 1 kilometer stretch of what we've been focusing on. And now this gives you a perspective of our land package. We did an airborne EN up the stretch. And this wildcat target here, we actually did a hole last winter here, about 5.5 kilometers away. And that hole was an amazing hole, 8 meters of almost 7.75 meters of almost 1 ounce PGMs. And I was at 60 meters. So very exciting. That's a top 5 hole in the PGM world last year. And we had some very interesting intercepts on the way up here with the airborne EM. And then the next thing we're doing is we're using this ambient noise tomography, which is basically super sensitive seismic that was developed in Australia. And we discovered Talon Metals is using it through Elon Musk, we think. And we've looked at this now. It's been up in operation on our property for about 6 weeks. We're seeing some amazing 3D discovery that's helping to chart our exploration. And we think it's going to have some amazing results for us. This is where the next round of drilling goes. We just finished hole 1, and it looks like it's sort of in this area that's not so enterprising. But our theory is the south and east trend. You see the reds is sort of where you want to be. That's the high grade nickel sulfides, but they're trending south and east, and we think this trend is continuing at depth. So this hole was 525 meters, about 425 true depth, and we're very encouraged with what we're seeing there, and we think this whole trend is at depth, and that we're long depth and at strike, that we're going to continue to extend this ore body in a significant way. What will that mean? This is this chart that we talked about at the outset, where we compare ourselves with other nickel sulfide projects around the world. And, obviously you have to see our tonnage growing from 3.1 to the 8 to 10, which is what we've been guiding. And we think it's going to be a lot more than that at the end of the day. So we think we're going to be very comparable tonnage-wise to those folks up here. And the grade is sometimes better, sometimes a little bit less, maybe 20% less than some. But when you look at these numbers, we're trading at 5%. This is like actually 400 million because of they own 60% of the project. So we're trading at less than 10% of the Talon Metals project, which is probably our most comparable. And I'm not downgrading Talon. I think Talon's a bargain here at these prices as well. I'm just saying from a risk return perspective, if you look at all the nickel sulfide projects in the world, there's no question that ours offers you the best risk return upside. And in my view, and obviously I'm very colored glasses. This is a project I deeply believe in and have invested significant time and capital in advancing it. The steps forward for us, pretty simple. We did first one, which was do our deal with CVMR Corporation to advance to do a feasibility study at NISC. We're back in drilling. We're going to have our MET studies and 43101 out fairly shortly, and then more drill assays coming, and then then we'll eventually have this feasibility study out by the end of the year. So this is going to be an action-packed year for Power Nickel. Lots of news coming frequently. So if you're an investor, that's a good thing. You like to have news, positive news coming frequently. That means you're creating value most times. One of the other things that we're doing is that's the end of the nickel story, so to speak, and that's why fundamentally you'd buy Power Nickel. But you are going to get some benefits from some of our other assets. We're spinning off. We're planning to spin off our copper gold assets, which are in Chile and in British Columbia, the Golden Triangle in British Columbia. We're this yellow area in here. This is Scotty Resources up here and Strike Point down there. Ascot's building a mine over here, just to give you some context. And this is the town of Stewart, and this is the mountaintop overlooking the town of Stewart. So it's a very interesting project, never been drilled. 3 half-ounce gold at surface. Scotty's, some of their best results are just north of us. Strike Point's best result was right on our border. So we think there's some it's a highly prospective copper gold exploration play. What might that be worth? Probably, our guess is it's probably worth $10 to $15 million when we spin this out, and the plan is to keep. We'll raise another couple $1 million for that company to act on its own 2 feet, and then the balance of the capital, 75% will be maintained by Power Nickel, 25% will be dividended out via a plan of arrangement to our shareholders, and that probably takes place in the October timeframe. October, November. In Chile, it's interesting. You'll see this is obviously a desert type environment that we're at. We're in this region 3. This is Candelaria, very prolific, multi-billion-dollar mine in its day. It's still going on another 4 or 5 years of life. They're desperate. This is owned now by Lundin. Used to be owned by Freeport-McMoRan. They're very interested to, obviously anything that would generate an ore body close by here. Zulema is very close. Would be of interest to them. The airborne, the ambient noise tomography will be very interesting for Chile. And, one of the big challenges with Chilean exploration is the desert has this limestone called caliche that obstructs things. The ambient noise sees through that. So that could be a game changer for Chile. Last asset to talk about is we have a royalty. We basically, we've put this up for sale now. And would expect we'd probably get something in the neighborhood of $5 million And while it's worth a lot more in the long run, it's 100 million tons of ore grade copper moly right now. That's like 0.4 or so, actually a little bit better than that. And never found the supergene, but supergene's there to be found. So we expect this is going to become a mine, and that'll be a nice little kicker for us to sell that. The management team is pretty lean because we're a junior, don't have a ton of people. Keeping it lean is great. We've added some new people like Ken Williamson to the team to help us. Ken's our VP of Exploration. Jimena runs Chile. Greg is a experienced ex-investment banker, runs a silver company on a public company. Peter is an experienced lawyer and retired, and Les, a successful businessman. The board owns about 4% of the stock, which is always good to see. Myself and my family own about 20%. Critical Elements, who we acquired NISC from, owns 10%. And the Stern family owns about 10%. And two hedge funds in Canada, BT Global and Palace Capital, own about 3% each. So about 50% of the title is owned by this group of six. And each of the last two rounds of financing we've acquired, this group has acquired 65 or 70% of each round. So I've been the biggest investor in each round. So clearly we like what we see, and we're backing it. So just to wrap it up and get to some questions, we think we've made a major nickel sulfide discovery. We basically trading at a massive discount to our peer group. We've obviously now brought industry into the picture with CVMR, a very credible leader in the nickel powders, anodes, and wire space, making the investment to conduct a feasibility study on NISC. They've come on board. And lots of news coming. We're drilling now. We'll have the metallurgical study out in a couple of weeks. We'll have an update at 43101. We expect that we'll get the spin out done in a couple of months. We're obviously in the battery metal space, which is this, we're doing the clean metal conferences because that space is so hot. The Quebec is an amazing spot to explore, where we got both exploration and long-term development benefits for building the mine. And I think that the final note I would say is this isn't going to be a small nickel mine. This is, I think, going to be a big one. Voisey's Bay was 50 million tons, Lynn Lake 22 million tons. I think we're going to be in that realm. So that's why it's an exciting investment story. So without further ado, let's go to questions and go from there. So a question is, what is the strategic significance of your partnership with CVMR? Couple of things. One, first, it's an endorsement by an industry player, a significant industry player with 18 mine and plants around the world, that they believe NISC is going to become a commercial viable mine. So that's number one thing. Second thing is it brings us to a different playing field. Obviously, we've been thinking that we'd just be a miner, would mine it, would do a feasibility study or preliminary economic assessment, maybe pre-fees, and then typically sell it. But now with CVMR on the picture, now it's possible that we'll end up doing a joint venture with them and building it, not us, because we don't have the expertise, but they do. And they could build it and operate it and sell it to the nickel to their clients. So it takes us into that refinery business, which is an evergreen business and much more lucrative. So I think it's got some amazing possibilities for us, economically, and we're really thrilled to be working with CVMR. When do we expect the spinouts to occur? In Q4. That would be when we expect that to occur. What are the catalysts to change investor perceptions about Power Nickel's valuation? That's a great one. I think if I actually knew the magic formula, I would have done it by now. I think perhaps people are wanting to see the 43101, to validate. I mean, we do post all of our drill collars and our azimuths and our models, and people can get in there and come to this conclusion that this ore body is pretty substantial right now. But maybe they're waiting on that. That might be the big thing. We're obviously doing more of these types of things, trying to get the word out to show people that, hey, we've made such amazing progress. We've got industry in there putting in, multiple millions of dollars, going to a feasibility study. So at some point, I think the market's going to wake up. I just don't know when, but I believe it's coming. What is CMR's annual revenue? How big are they? Well, they're a private company, so we don't really know. But I understand they're doing more than $1 billion a year in sales. So how many, I don't know, but that's what I've heard. And what are the catalysts to change? Oh, yeah, we've got that one already. I'll go one more down. When will you publish the drill results of the fall drill program? We're basically thinking we just finished hole 1, and we would expect to get that probably out in early October. So, once early, between now and then, we'll have the metallurgical study, which should be out in mid-September, with 43-101 in, say, mid-October. And then the drill results will probably be starting in, sort of mid-October as well. So, and at that point, pretty much every couple of weeks we'll be having results. So it's going to be action-packed. And then the spin-out will happen in Q4. So a pretty busy time of pretty meaningful stuff. And the question is, what do how impactful do you think the ambient noise tomography will be on your exploration program? And I'm going to go back and show you something here, if I can get to it. One more there. So where you see hole number 1 here, it looks like it's in this yellowish area, which is not the primary nickel bearing zone. But it's sort of a bit of an optical illusion, because what happens is when we model this, or when we saw it on the ambient noise tomography, we could see very clearly. It's almost like, as I said, seeing like a mountain range underneath the surface, and then we could see that this thing extends at depth. And so what we're tracing down with these holes is, you see they're all going quite a bit deeper. And this is the ore body is going. So this hole was probably 525 meters total depth, but probably true depth around 400, 425. This will be 450. This is going to be 5. This is going to be more like 700. So we're seeing a lot of potential upside here at depth, and all that's made possible by the ambient noise tomography. And what's neat is it's shown us this trend. There's 2 other trends that we're seeing in the Nisk main. And then what's interesting, as we move north and east towards the Wildcat hole, where we had that 8 meters of the 1 ounce PGMs, we're seeing a number of interesting targets there. That's why we're so bullish on how big this will be. This won't be in our mind, will not be a small nickel mine. It'll be a pretty substantial one, and possibly historic. So that's about it. I think that's the last question that I've got. Oh, wait, there's one more. Tell us a bit more about your current drill program. We sort of covered that. So I think the first initial phases is to test the project at depth here, and hopefully extend that out. And I think that's what's happening. And then we'll be in September. We'll be stepping back to this area here, where we had the amazing 1 ounce PGMs, and we'll be following 3 follow-up holes there. You can add some magic in a hurry there if we continue to get 8 meters of 1 ounce PGMs, I can tell you. So that will be happening late September. So that will be, and we'll be basically, moving the drill rig, down here, and then possibly when we're done up here, we've got some amazing EM targets in here that we'd like to get at as well. So no shortage of great targets, and lots of amazing opportunity for Power Nickel here in the next short period of time. I think that about wraps it up. We're about out of time. I wanted to thank you for attending and listening to the Power Nickel story, and hope to see you as a shareholder someday. Have a great day. Ciao for now.